regards to the pause on military assistance to Ukraine, you put out on your social media post today that Russia is pounding Ukraine.
That's right.
Why not provide Ukraine with air defenses? And what happens, Mr. President, when Ukraine runs out of the Patriot missile batteries?
Good question. Because I have to know that they want to settle. I don't know that they want to settle. If they don't want to settle, we're out of there. Because we want them to settle. And I'm doing it to stop death. More important than anything else. Secondarily, way down the line is the money. So we're in for $350 billion, and Europe is in for $100 billion. They should be in for the same or more than us. And, you know, I watched over the last week or so what's going on in Europe. This thing could end up in World War III if we don't get it settled. This could really end up in a World War III. We got to get it settled.
If it wasn't clear already that Donald Trump is not the economic genius that he claims to be, I think we have enough evidence with the latest jobs report, the tanking stock market, and what has been dubbed the stupidest trade war in history. Donald Trump is on the verge of causing a recession, and we're only a couple of weeks into his presidency, and clearly he knows that not only in the way that he's trying to quickly bail on his tariffs, but reacting to questions about the economy at large. And that is exactly what we saw in an Oval Office press conference today when he was confronted about the terrible state of the economy due to the actions of his administration, and it wasn't too good for Donald. We're going to get into all that, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button, it goes a long way. And it really does mean a lot to me. Now let's get into this first clip of Trump trying to brag about the economy, but didn't go too well.
But under the first full month of President Trump, which we haven't even gotten started yet, an incredible 93% of all job gains were in the private sector. So that statistic just came out. Big gains for native-born Americans for the first time in 15 months. The job gains for native-born Americans, for American people born in America, exceeded job gains for migrant and foreign-born workers. This is the first time that's happened in more than 15 months. Employment for native-born workers went up by 284,000, while foreign-born workers went down by 87,000.
We talked about this in a previous video, how Donald Trump is now trying to come up with new ways to measure economic success. He's trying to find new economic indicators. They want to reshape the way that GDP is calculated. Because of the economic downturn, we are already seeing they're just trying to find new numbers, new ways, a new narrative to try to pretend that Trump is having any success when it's clear that the opposite is happening. And it's not just Democrats calling it out. It is business leaders feeling the effects, talking about how damaging and detrimental this chaos is. And yeah, it's causing Trump to panic. Listen to his response when he was asked about his tariffs right here.
Millions of Americans watched your joint address earlier this week where you warned that there could be a little disturbance that Americans could feel as a function of these taxes, these tariffs. How much disturbance are you willing to accept in the near term as a function of that? And to set expectations, how long should Americans expect things to cost a bit more?
Well, so far, Peter, there hasn't been very much because these numbers are coming out. We're here for just a little over 4 weeks. And these are fantastic numbers. I was watching some of the reports this morning. They were surprised. There could be some disturbance, a little bit of disturbance. I solved a little bit of that because I have respect for our auto companies, and I gave them a little bit of a 1-month reprieve because it was unfair, although I'm sure they'll take advantage of it. I see they're driving a lot of cars into the U.S. to try and avoid the tariffs, and they're taking advantage of it a little bit. But they called me, they asked me, they said, could they have a little bit?
He continues to just admit it. I guess he doesn't care. at this point. He was asked about the stock market just the other day, which is, I would say, facing a little bit more than just turbulence. I'd say it's a pretty significant downturn, and he says that he's just not even looking at it anymore. He doesn't care. Trump has admitted this again and again and again. He's fine with people feeling pain. He's fine with prices rising. He's fine with what he calls a little bit of a disturbance, but it's a lot more than that. Clearly, this is a government by the billionaires for the billionaires, and Donald Trump does not care how expensive your eggs are or if your tariffs impact your purchasing. He doesn't care. He's just going to keep on letting them happen, and he's going to keep on letting people go as well. He was asked about that right here.
President Trump with those remarks.
Federal government layoffs will impact the labor market, will weaken the labor market.
Oh. No, I think the labor market's going to be fantastic, but it's going to have high-paying manufacturing jobs as opposed to government jobs. We had too many people in government. You can't just do that. We had many, too many. This is for 40 years. You know, this isn't just now. This built up and got worse and worse, and they just hire more and more people. You look at Department of Education, it seems like so many buildings I ride by, it says Department of Education. They're all over the place. And we don't even want it. We want the education to be given by the states. It'll be much better. It'll be...
Yeah, Donald, firing people by the hundreds of thousands will hurt the labor market when you're getting rid of jobs in this mass exodus. That is a problem, especially when it's in such targeted areas. We see huge job losses in Virginia, where there are so many government workers. We see veterans in mass being laid off. And Donald Trump, once again, just doesn't seem to care, doesn't care that this is the most anti-veteran administration in history. He doesn't care the economic collapse that is looming because of his actions, and he does not care about the many ways we'll have to figure out a new economy because of his tariffs. And he talked about that right here, and we're going to get into it after.
But our numbers are a tiny fraction of that, almost non-existent. And what we're doing is freeing up our forests from the environmental nonsense that they put on them, where you can't cut down a tree. And we have to cut down trees in order to build the firewalls. And those trees are sold, but we're freeing it up on an emergency basis because Canada has been ripping us off for years on tariffs for lumber and for dairy products. 250%, nobody ever talks about that, 250% tariff, which is taking advantage of our farmers, so that's not going to happen anymore.
Rather than continue to participate in one of our longest, it's laughable in our longest partnerships with Canada. And in trade, freely, as we have done for so long, Donald Trump would rather cut down hundreds of millions of acres of forests instead of just trading with Canada. This is absolute insanity. What this administration is willing to do in order to serve such a small group of people, either a couple of billionaires or Donald Trump's fragile ego, is consistently shocking, or maybe it isn't. Maybe we shouldn't be surprised that Donald Trump would rather slash our forests than admit that he was wrong. And that is simply what this is about. He will not admit that not going to happen. And when we see more of this, of course, with the Republican budget refusing to admit that they are kicking millions of people off of their health care in order to serve a small group of billionaires, which is what Elizabeth Warren called out right here.
The Biden administration has rallied the world to impose historic sanctions against Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. These sanctions include seizing yachts, mansions, financial holdings that Vladimir Putin and his oligarch buddies have stashed abroad. But to enforce these sanctions, we need to know who owns what. So, Mr. Rosen, if confirmed, you would play a leading role on the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. Now, CFIUS doesn't enforce sanctions, but they do review foreign investments in the United States to make sure that they don't pose a risk to our national security. That means that they know a lot about the importance of finding out who is behind an investment. So Mr. Rosen, let me ask you, when a shell company tries to buy a U.S. semiconductor company or real estate right next to a military base, CFIUS does a tremendous amount of work to find out who is behind the shell company, often the entity known as the beneficial owner. So why is it so important to national security that we know the actual identity of who's investing in the United States?
Senator Warren, thank you for that question. Certainly understanding where money is coming from, who is controlling the money, what does that flow look like, are key considerations in any national security risk assessment.
But CFIUS only reviews a few hundred transactions a year, and it focuses on investments that lead to foreign control of important U.S. businesses. That's its special niche. That prevents foreign adversaries from buying the companies that, for example, run our power grid, but it doesn't stop criminals, terrorists, and sanctioned oligarchs from making other kinds of investments in the U.S., including stashing a lot of money here. We do have other safeguards. Know your customer requirements require the financial institutions to ask basic questions about potential clients before helping them hide buckets of cash in our financial markets. Now, these rules apply to most American financial institutions like banks and mutual funds and even casinos. Catherine Cortez Masto thought you might want to remember that. They're all paying attention under Know Your Customer. But there is a huge loophole for the $11 trillion private investment industry. Mr. Rosen, if a Russian oligarch uses a shell company to invest his billions with a U.S. private equity firm, is that private equity firm required to find out who's actually behind that shell company?
Senator, I do not believe so.
That's right. The answer is no. And that creates a huge loophole for oligarchs to be able to evade sanctions and to continue to carry on business right here in the United States. This loophole also poses a threat to the stability of our financial system because we don't know what parts of the financial system have been infiltrated by Russian money. And that means we don't know what impact sanctions could have. And it's hard to be confident that private funds are actually complying with sanctions as required by current law. So, Mr. Rosen, do you agree that it is a threat to both national security and financial stability to allow private investment companies to blindly accept cash of Russian oligarchs, not to mention money from human traffickers, drug lords, and terrorists?
Senator, I certainly believe that beneficial ownership inquiry analysis is a key national security consideration, particularly when it comes to CFIUS.
Good. You know, last year, the Biden administration committed to fixing this loophole, but Russia's invasion of Ukraine has made it clear we don't have any time to waste here. With every day that passes, Russian oligarchs and government officials continue to profit from illegal investments in the United States. That's why I sent a letter last week to the Treasury Department and the SEC asking them to immediately close the Know Your Customer loophole for the private investment industry. The United States has led the world in imposing strong sanctions against Russia, and we must use every tool possible to enforce those sanctions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It is very clear who they are serving. It's certainly not us, and that's what we have to call out every single day on the show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around at the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.